So thank you for everybody for joining. I am Laurent Clermont with IBM. Today I will essentially introduce our host, Jared Michalec. Jared Michalec is BPM+ODM practice leader at Salient Process, one of our key trusted partners. And today, Jared is going to focus on a solution that they have, which is actually more than a solution. So it is a toolkit and a demo that they have to use ODM and BPM. It's an example where BPM and ODM are going to complement a business solution first in this case today. And the idea is that when Salesforce is part of a process that goes beyond itself, BPM can extend that reach, extend that these capabilities beyond the reach of Salesforce itself, and it's the same for other solutions that we can think of. It's also going to check ODM, decision management, business rules, and insights to get additional insights and makes more powerful decisions on data that is sitting in Salesforce, but that people outside of Salesforce, people that are in teams that are not in the sales team, will be using beyond Salesforce. So I will let Jared go through it. I just thank everyone for joining, and Jared, thank you for seeing us today, and take it away.
Great, thank you, Laurent, and yeah, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. Apologies for the last-minute reschedule of time and venue, but hopefully you still get a lot of value out of this session. I'm also very happy to continue the discussion afterwards if you have interest in asking questions. We'll open it up to Q&A at the end of this, but certainly happy to have further discussions once we finish with this session. As Laurent mentioned, my name is Jared Michalec. I am with a gold business partner with IBM. We are exclusively an IBM partner. We focus on the BPM and ODM technologies, also known as the Digital Process Automation Suite from IBM. Most of us are former IBMers and even former Heritage employees such as Lombardi, iLog, AppSoft, etc. Today we're going to focus in on what we just mentioned, and the core of this is that we get asked all the time whether folks should use BPM, should they use ODM, should they use Salesforce, and then introducing Watson into the mix. The point of this session is not necessarily to show you a full-blown working solution. It's really to show you where the pieces fit, where you can leverage value from certain capabilities, and where the connections are, and how we see some value. And a lot of this originated from internal things that we were doing. We eat our own dog food or drink our own champagne, depending on how you want to phrase it. And we use BPM and ODM internally, and we also are a Salesforce user for our sales automation. And so a lot of what you're going to see today comes from innovation by necessity that we've created in-house at Salient Process. So to start off, let's talk about what we're going to see today. Again, this is a very high-level demonstration just to kind of show you the art of the possible and where these connections of these different capabilities fit. And there's three patterns that we're going to talk about today. The first is around BPM and Salesforce. Again, we are a Salesforce user. We're also a user of BPM extensively throughout our organization. And so we want to talk about how these two can fit together and how you really can leverage both of them and even use BPM on top of Salesforce to really achieve that true end-to-end process, and not to say one or the other. It's really using both together. And this goes hand in hand with the recent announcement from IBM and Salesforce about the strategic partnership that they're doing. And so this is very timely, and it's also a very powerful solution that we'll talk about and that we use very successfully within Salient. Second is around BPM and Watson. We also call this cognitive business operations, and this is really where we start to see the ability to leverage some of the capabilities, and not the Watson that played Jeopardy, but the Watson services that are available through the Bluemix platform, things like text-to-speech, speech-to-text, sentiment analysis, tone analyzer, and others. And we'll talk about how this might be achieved, be able to use BPM or use Watson in conjunction with a BPM process, and to really make the decision-making and the capabilities inside of that human process much more efficient and much more comprehensive. And lastly, we're going to talk about BPM and decision management. So not just looking at using Watson and some of the analytics and some of the cognitive capabilities, but also where we have some business operations, business decisions that we can leverage that are maybe reusable across the business, and using BPM with the decision management capabilities. And this is, you know, a much bigger topic than we're going to hit on today, but certainly having these two pieces of the portfolio working together, while they can be very successfully implemented separately, we also see some very interesting things when we combine these capabilities and work with, you know, implementing reusable core business decisions inside of the BPM platform. So let's talk about Salesforce. And as most of you are aware, Salesforce is a SaaS solution. It was one of the first really successful SaaS solutions. In many ways, it really started the SaaS revolution, and allowing people to really just leverage a platform in the cloud and not have to install things on site. And just based on the name, we know that it can focus on sales and Salesforce automation, being able to track opportunities, you know, progress leads, et cetera. So certainly sales is a big part and cornerstone to Salesforce, but that's not all it does. You can also do marketing and lead generation through Salesforce. We can track contacts. I'm going to pause for a sec. If everyone can go on mute, that would be really great. I appreciate it. So marketing is a really key capability here as well, and obviously sales and marketing go hand in hand. But we see a lot of people also using this for customer service, right, and being able to leverage you know, the ability to track these contacts, track tickets, track other kinds of issues and support items through this platform. So really, at the end of the day, Salesforce is a CRM platform, let's be honest, right? So obviously it got its start as really just doing sales opportunities, leads, but this kind of morphed into this much larger piece where Salesforce is now the system of record for a lot of companies and organizations. And so being able to have that contact information, account information, history, products, tickets, everything that goes with kind of tracking what your customer is doing and what they're interested in. And so the whole idea now is, what happens before that, right? What happens when you have prospects or leads or other customer activity that is not falling within the boundaries of your Salesforce or your CRM application? And how do you capture some of the things that are going on there? And then downstream, what happens when you close an opportunity and you need to implement something or build something or create something that, again, the participants or the key people that are involved in that may not have access to your CRM platform. So how do you bridge that gap? And that's really where BPM comes into play, where it's not going to replace what you're doing in your core activities inside of Salesforce. It's really going to kind of fill the gaps and really create a cohesive, true end-to-end process between all the way at the start, where you're identifying leads, identifying new customers, bringing that into either the sales or service or marketing platform, and then downstream, what happens outside, you know, participants that are not included as a Salesforce user, how do you include them as part of the bigger process? All right, so this is what we'll hit on in the demonstration. Right, and we really see three use cases in this respect. Right, we talked about the upstream things coming in, where we have inbound activities and then passing that to Salesforce. Again, using Salient as the reference point here, we do this internally, where we have, if you go to our website, you can request a demo, or you can register for support for the Spark UI toolkit, and you can then that will pass through into Salesforce, and for us, that's a BPM process, right? We want to track that. We want to be able to assign tasks, to follow up accordingly, to have deadlines, to have escalations when things are not being met. And so that bigger BPM process certainly involves Salesforce, and it's kicking things off in Salesforce, like lead creation, account creation, but we're also managing that end-to-end process in BPM. Then the downstream, right? What happens when you have an opportunity closes, right? What are all the things that need to happen? Again, for Salient, we're a services company, so how do we make sure that the delivery team and the accounting and the product team is all on the same page, making sure that we have all the pieces moving so that when we identify a start date for our project, that everything is in place, we don't have any missing pieces of information, everyone's on the same page, and so passing that information downstream, and our delivery team does not have access to Salesforce. So how do we pass that data and the relevant information, the key contacts, and the account history to our delivery managers and consultants? And this is a great example where, you know, looking at that, again, that true end-to-end process. And the third pattern, and I'll actually talk about a fourth pattern too, which I don't have on this slide, but I'll mention briefly. But the third pattern is around using Salesforce as the source of truth. So not necessarily replicating data, and this is why you notice I haven't used the word integration yet, but using the data in Salesforce as the source of truth, as the driver for BPM. So you're not replicating, you're not integrating, you're simply using the data that's inside of Salesforce to drive through the process, expose it when necessary through BPM activities, but still keeps that data in the place that it resides. And so you don't have this out of sync notion, you don't have the need to integrate back and forth. It's simply presenting the data when it's relevant to the user and then persisting that inside of the Salesforce system. Now the fourth pattern is something that we're exploring now, and this is something that we're seeing more and more, and that's basically headless BPM, for those of you familiar with BPM. And the idea is that if users are used to using Salesforce as their system of interaction, not just their system of record, then why not present BPM tasks in Salesforce as activities, as tasks, rather than have to force them to log into a separate system? And this is something that is certainly, you know, makes sense, and it is absolutely another pattern that we're seeing and we can support. I just don't have it on the slide here, but it's something that certainly if you're interested in that, that's something that we're doing now as well. So having basically allowing BPM to basically run the process under the covers and then presenting those tasks or activities in the system that makes sense, in this case Salesforce, or whatever system of engagement or interaction that makes sense for that user. And as Laurent mentioned at the beginning, we do have a integrated toolkit that allows us to basically, in a low-code environment, drag and drop these capabilities for Salesforce integration without having to write a line of code. So this is basically a wrapper for the API. It's using all the supported APIs inside of Salesforce, but there's nothing you need to do to create those that actual code. The most code that you're going to write is basically the SOAP, which is the SQL-like language that Salesforce supports. But even that is not always necessary. You can basically point it to a system of record and have it pull up that activity or that data item when it's relevant at that point in the task. All right, let's talk about pattern 2. And again, I'm going to get through these slides in a few minutes here, and then we'll jump right into the product and show the actual running demonstration. But I wanted to set the stage here. So the second pattern is BPM and Watson. And the idea here for our use case and for our demonstration is that imagine that we have the ability to expose opportunities from Salesforce inside of BPM. Right, and as a user of Salesforce, one of the things that I struggle with is knowing which opportunities or which accounts I should follow up on or focus on during the course of the day. So how do you know, and when you have one or two accounts, it's very easy to know the mood of the customer or what they're doing. But as that grows, and many customers, many of our clients have sales reps that are using Salesforce with hundreds or even thousands of different opportunities or accounts. And so being able to focus in on the really high-value follow-ups is really critical. And so one of the capabilities that we use internally is there's an Outlook plugin that allows us to attach emails to our Salesforce records. So very intuitively, as the emails come in from either our clients or prospects or also from IBMers that are related to the accounts that we're following, we can simply click a button and attach that email to that opportunity or lead or account. And over time, that's great because now you have a history of what's going on. Let's leverage that information, right? Let's take that information and instead of having to comb through that history and that data, maybe let Watson use its cognitive ability to go through those and basically tell us the mood of the customer. Again, this is a very basic demo, so we're not going to go into great detail about some of the analytics that we could employ. But at a high level, let's say that we want to pass these emails for a certain account into Watson to say, what's the mood of my clients, right? Tell me what my clients are thinking right now. Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they angry? So being able to get that feedback quickly. And Watson can run that through their tone analysis and return the answer based on those 13 dimensions of tone. And we can get some really good data points just based on this, right? So each of those can get some of those metrics back, and we can review those in a very intuitive way. And that's great, right? But when you have one or two accounts, that's really easy to review those manually. Now let's take it to the next level and say, well, now that we have all those 13 dimensions for all of my opportunities, what happens when I have 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 opportunities that I'm trying to track? I want to automate some of that. So using BPM+ODM, we can take that data, right, that information that's collected from our internal systems, our history, the process, Salesforce, and now also the Watson data, pass that all into ODM to say, which contacts should I prioritize, right? Who should I follow up with first? Give me some rankings, give me some ratings based on certain rules that I've created. And we can use all this data, including things like propensity to buy, or what's the product history, or what's the geography, or what time of day is it. So passing all that data into ODM, it will return back based on some business rules. Here's the clients to follow up with. Right. So again, the demo here is fairly high level, but this is showing you kind of how these different pieces can work together. And the last slide I'll show for now is how we bring it all together. So this is BPM, if you're not familiar, so it's a real running human service that we're going to basically view the opportunities. So we have the BPM and Salesforce integration, being able to expose Salesforce objects internally inside of BPM. We're going to select one of those opportunities and get some tone analysis from Watson. We'll review those results, and then we can run those through our business rules to get our feedback, right? So again, just pulling together all four of those capabilities, BPM, Salesforce, Watson, and ODM. And with that, I'm going to go to the demonstration. I'm going to pause. I want to keep this somewhat informal. I know we're recording this session, and you guys are joining remotely, but if there's any questions, please jump in. Otherwise, I'll keep going with the demo. All right, it's a shy group. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. So I have my human service already deployed here. And so what you're seeing now is basically my BPM human service that's going to pull in my Salesforce opportunities. So all the items you see in the list right here, this is Salesforce data. So there's nothing in BPM that's storing this information, that's holding onto this data. It's basically just a pointer to our Salesforce records. So it could be opportunities, it could be tasks, it could even be internal integrations or flows inside of Salesforce. And each of our activities have a history with them according to what opportunity we're looking at. So I do have one opportunity that has a number of different comments or emails on it. So if I click my Burlington Textiles, you'll see at the bottom here that I have 3 emails that came in from this opportunity. right? And you can see there are 3 different emails, so that we're just using this to highlight kind of the different tones that we could get back from Watson. But the first one is kind of neutral, right? Thank you for reaching out. I'm not interested at this time. Okay, well, that's kind of, we'll leave that on the table and maybe follow up in a couple of weeks. The second is Sally, right? This is so great. I'm so excited about this new product. Contact me immediately. That probably is someone I want to follow up with, right? So we should get a good rating out of that. Last one, this is awful. Stop contacting me. Again, very negative. We may still want to reach out just to figure out what happened, but maybe not as high a priority as Sally. So again, we're talking about these kind of 3 different feedbacks, and we're going to run these through Watson to get that tone, and then we're going to run that through the business rules to get some rankings to know who we should follow up with. And again, not to be repetitive, but at this level, it's very obvious, right, who I should follow up with right now as a salesperson. But again, it's economy of scale, and we want to know as we grow this, and what if I have 100 accounts that have these emails? How do I have to manually go through each account every single day to figure out who I should follow up with, or should I just have something that tells me, in a very, natural way? It's not going to be too prescriptive or too automated, but to at least let me, do a little bit of the heavy lifting for me and provide me with a little bit of visibility into my accounts. So I'm going to go ahead and click this Analyze Text. It's going to basically run these 3 comments through Watson and then present me back with the results. So at the bottom, I have a chart that shows me all of the different feedback, right? And I can just kind of highlight different chart types, right, just to see visually how each of these compare. That's useful, but I think what's more useful is if I click on one of these comments, like the first one, which is pretty neutral, I get those 13 dimensions right here, right? So I can see Jack's tone was pretty neutral, and we can see exactly that, right? Joy was about 12, but other than that, everything's pretty neutral. If I click Sally, I'm going to see the joy goes way up, right? It's up at 89, high confidence, et cetera. And then finally, John, extremely negative, right? We've got anger. And so we can now see at a glance, what the tone of each of my customers is. And again, this is useful, and especially if I'm only working with a handful of customers at a time, this is really nice. But what happens when I want to automate some of this, right? And so I can go down here to my rule analysis, and instead of just visually comparing these different tones, I can run some business rules to see what that tone looks like. And you can see very quickly, and I can just rank these right here, right? I'm getting some results back. Very confident, high joy, very positive, right? So these are the rule results that are coming back from ODM. So I've created a set of reasonable business decisions that are basically ranking our different interactions with these customers and letting me kind of filter these out. It's not removing anyone, and it's not taking away any of those interactions, but it is giving me a little more insight into what the mood of my customer is, right? And to show you that this is real, we can add a new comment, and maybe I'm going to say, Jared said that I love this demo. This is amazing, right? So we can add that comment, and I can click on this, and I can see that it's got pretty high joy. Look at that. It's almost 100. I can see it here, my rating, and I can kind of remove, maybe compare Sally to Jared, right? We can see that Jared's pretty high up there. And then we can rerun those rules and get back some new feedback. And in this case, Jared's the new contact I'm going to follow up with. So again, just showing you that it's extremely interactive. It can be, we can use a large variety of data that's coming in. Some of the other capabilities that we haven't incorporated into this, but is certainly applicable in how it fits in, RPA, right? So how would I maybe automate some of my external sources of information, pulling in data from maybe a mainframe application or other kinds of sources that traditional integration doesn't apply, or maybe I want to do some automation on my emails or outbound touches or some kind of a form entry to capture some of that data. So RPA would certainly play a role here too. So that's kind of it. This is what we've put together as kind of how these different pieces can really fit together and play an important part in the overall process, but certainly each component can be used independently, obviously, as well. I'm going to pause, and I can go a little bit deeper. I can show the rules. I can maybe show some of the BPM if people are interested. But I'm going to pause and see if there's any questions and what other places people want to go. A very quiet group.
This is Gary Rudnicki from Jackson, and so this is we're just getting into BPM ODM. I'm just getting ready to take my first big project to investment committee tomorrow. So we're still pretty new on this, but so I wasn't even sure exactly what I would be saying. This is very, very fascinating. We do have Salesforce here. It's not necessarily, I never considered our system of records, but we do have a lot of great, valuable information in it. So these rules that return back, I was envisioning ahead of time, I was wondering where ODM was going to fit into it, because I was assuming Watson would return all this, but you took the Watson analysis and then fed that back to your ODM rules to come up with this?
That's exactly right, and that's what we see, is that Watson can return a lot of the raw data, and certainly there's some analytics and other important aspects, but when you start talking about real business information and really your proprietary, and differentiating decisions, you can't automate a lot of that, or you can't, build that into a cognitive system. Certainly you can get part of the way there, but using that in conjunction with your true business rules and your ability to have subject matter experts have visibility and be able to make quick changes to those, that's really where we see a lot of value add when you start talking about Watson and ODM.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, and this is Matthew here with Salient. To add to that, Gary, consider a situation where maybe, one group within your company wants to start looking out for maybe growth accounts from Salesforce, but then maybe there's a customer service who wants to target accounts or interactions that have had low customer service ratings. You could use ODM to actually define different sets of business rules that are going to consume that Watson insight, and be able to make those decisions like Jared was describing by using ODM, based upon that specific need of that group within your company.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and just to kind of bring that home, again, this is an extremely basic demo, right? So our rule environment is not extremely robust, but we do have some very specific artifacts that we've created. In fact, I could make changes to these rules right now and redeploy it, and it would give me different results in those rankings. But this is just one example of where we can see, maybe some different decision criteria in the decision table where we have, we're passing in anger, disgust, fear, joy, sadness, and just based on that, we're adjusting the ranking up or down, and then adding some notes. So this is where those notes are coming from over here, right, where we're adding those different notes, we're adjusting the score up or down. So this is just one, very basic way to do this, but there's certainly a lot of other criteria that we can employ here based on, even coming from our analytics system on their propensity to buy or their next best offer. It could be coming from historical data on what they've purchased in the past or their discount level or other kinds of things that we would want to include here and use that as kind of a reference point for that overall decision. And you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a trade-off there between going, yes, you can do a lot in Watson, absolutely, and there's a lot of really interesting things you can do with the analytics side, but trusting a lot of your core business to a kind of malleable cognitive model is not always the best option, and you want to balance that with your kind of core business rules as well. So that's definitely a good point that we should bring up.
Well, it really helps me a lot because, again, my boss, who's even a step farther away from this than I am, was everything that she's heard, about Watson and the experiences, that our IBM folks have kind of shared with us. She's thinking, more and more that it can do a lot of the things that we're modeling right now. We're starting to develop for our ODM, but what this really is you're using it to gather, using Watson to gather information and analyze it and return information. And I think you just said we would build our rules. Those are rules that we trust, that we develop based on our business model. This is just taking the Watson data into that to help us make good decisions.
You're spot on, and there's, you know, the other side of that is it's more than just executing the rules. It's about being able to do simulation, you know, what if scenarios, being able to do some testing against expected values. Those are things that's where you get the BRMS, right? The management system, where Watson is more, you're not sure what you're going to get, right? On the outbound side, you kind of have a hint most of the time, but it's not always as prescriptive as ODM can be. And in a lot of cases, especially with things like compliance or pricing, you don't want to leave that to chance. You want to be able to be very, you know, predictive about what is going to be the result in certain situations, and not get unexpected results from that. Whereas a chatbot, maybe
we also often
you are okay with that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, we often see ODM or business rules adding that layer of consistency, compliance, auditability as well, because you get to know why a decision was made. With Watson, you won't know all the time, right? It's a little more fuzzy logic, I guess, the least we can say. But yeah, it's often a layer that we want to add for predictability, consistency, auditability, and compliance, which can be key depending on the use case. Like you said, for the chatbot, it may not matter, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, that really helps a lot. You guys did a great job so far on this. I mean, for again taking like a novice and helping me understand what the potential is here.
Perfect. Yeah, and I did see a question in the chat as well asking about our Watson toolkit. We do have integration capabilities. We do have reusable services that we've used to connect to multiple Watson services. It's not an official toolkit, but it's certainly part of our delivery methodology. And one of the things I didn't mention at the start of this call is that Salient is not just a trusted implementation and sales and marketing partner with IBM, but we're also a trusted development partner. If you're using BPM past the June release, you're using our UI framework that we developed as part of the core BPM platform. And so that relationship is not stopped there. And we have a number of other toolkits that are being developed or are available, such as obviously the Salesforce toolkit that we talked about here. There's also a low-code, no-code toolkit that allows you to import Blue or Slack processes and create BPM without having to do development in Process Designer inside of IBM BPM. And we have a number of others as well, including accelerators around things like RPA and other IBM connectivity. So we're happy to talk about those as well. But most of those are available as part of our services offerings and not necessarily a licensed toolkit per se, but we can certainly have that discussion as well. Any other questions? Just leave the mic open for now. I don't have a whole lot else to show, but happy to go into more details on the integration side or some of the other things that we've seen in the field as well. Okay, well, again, thank you everybody for joining. I really appreciate it. Sorry we couldn't meet in person as originally planned, but happy to do any follow-ups. One of the things I'll throw up on the screen here is, and I think you did see this as part of the invite, but certainly feel free to reach out to myself or anyone at Salient. You can go to salientprocess.com and reach out to us that way as well. But again, we're very committed to seeing our client success and being able to implement these various solutions, and that includes additional capabilities such as RPA, blockchain, and kind of the other peripheral components that comprise the DPA suite that IBM offers. And again, we have years and years of experience doing this and a very trusted partner with IBM. So with that, I'll close the call. Thank you again for joining, and have a great night.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you very much, and thank you for everyone for your time.